We trust things that feel familiar because the brain equates familiarity with safety. It's a survival instinct. What we've seen before hasn't hurt us, so we're wired to trust it. And that trust leads people to get scammed. They fall because it feels just familiar enough. And nothing feels safer and familiar than a farm full of virtual cows. That's what made Çiftlik Bank so dangerous. It didn't look like a scam, it looked like a game, and it stole everything. It began with a game. In 2016, a new mobile app took Turkey by storm, Çiftlik Bank, which means farm bank. It looked like a simple farm simulation game. You raise virtual cows and chickens on your phone, but with a shocking twist, players were promised real profits in return. This wasn't just about scoring points. The game claimed that if your digital animals thrived, you would actually make money. It was as if a popular Facebook game like Farmville had been crossed with Wall Street, blurring fantasy and reality in a way no one had seen before. The promise was irresistible. Win while you play and have fun as you win, the platform advertised, urging people to invest in what they believed were actual livestock and farmland. Early users bragged about receiving hefty payouts, fueling a frenzy. Thousands rushed to pour their savings into buying virtual cows, chickens, bees, and crops in the game. Some players even took out bank loans to invest more, convinced that growing their online farm would yield a golden harvest in cash. It sounded like the ultimate get-rich-quick hack, a farming simulation that could change your real-life fortune. But behind the cute cartoons of barns and animals, something far more serious was happening. People started treating Çiftlik Bank not just as a pastime, but as an investment. Families sold belongings, students emptied their savings, and farmers, ironically, thought this digital farm could be their ticket to prosperity. In villages and cities alike, word spread that this game was a miracle money machine. It was like Farmville meets a Ponzi scheme, though few realized it yet, and for a while it seemed to work. Account balances grew, withdrawals were paid out, and skeptics were silenced by friends showing off real bank receipts. By late 2017, Çiftlik Bank boasted over 500,000 registered users, of whom more than 130,000 had put in actual money. The virtual farms were thriving, and on paper, so were the players. However, every miracle has a catch. As more people joined and the numbers ballooned, whispers of doubt began. Where exactly were these profits coming from? How could feeding a pretend cow on a smartphone make anyone rich in reality? The game's operators insisted everything was genuine. They claimed the money users invested was funding real livestock farms and food production projects across Turkey, which in turn generated profit to pay back players. Slick advertisements even showed actual cows and shiny dairies. And the company opened branded farm product shops in many cities to bolster the illusion. For a time, Çiftlik Bank had everyone spellbound, too spellbound to see the truth. In reality, this farm was nothing but fields of make-believe, and the lush profits were as virtual as the pixelated chickens on the app. The stage was set for a devastating reveal, but who was the mastermind behind this fantasy? How did a simple game pull off such an enormous swindle? To uncover that, we have to meet the man in the hoodie pulling the strings behind the virtual farmyard facade. He was known as Tosunçuk, which roughly translates to chubby kid, a nickname given for his boyish, round-faced appearance. But behind that harmless look, Mehmet Aydın was anything but innocent. In 2016, this 25-year-old from a modest background went from small-time internet hustler to the kingpin of a $130 million scam virtually overnight. Dressed casually in hoodies and jeans, Aydın didn't fit the stereotype of a slick con artist. He looked more like the IT guy than a criminal mastermind. Yet he understood something profound. In the digital age, trust can be engineered. He knew that if he wrapped a pyramid scheme inside a friendly game, people would let their guard down. After all, who would suspect a farming app with cute animals of stealing their life savings? Mehmet Aydın's backstory reads like the prologue of a cyber thriller. Born in 1991 to a farming family, he was a restless youth who drifted between odd jobs. He washed dishes at a cafe, tried and failed to launch a rap music career under the alias Ego Man, and even peddled gimmicky products like X-ray glasses that he claimed could see through clothes. By mid-2016, Aydin had zero experience in finance or agriculture, but he was an avid gamer. He had seen the popularity of Farmville and other online games, and he had an idea. What if a game like that paid real money? It was a simple twist that no one had tried at scale. With that spark, he incorporated a company in northern Cyprus and launched Çiftlik Bank, presenting himself as a young tech CEO with a visionary idea. From the outset, Aydin designed Çiftlik Bank as a Ponzi scheme, camouflaged as a legit business. Early investors were enticed with extraordinary returns, which he paid using the influx of money from newer players. Classic Ponzi strategy. But Aydin's genius was how he dressed up the scheme. He hired developers to create a polished farm simulation app, complete with happy farm animals and a friendly user interface. He concocted an elaborate backstory that players' money was buying real cows and feed, building Europe's biggest dairy farm, as he grandly claimed. To sell the lie, he even staged ribbon-cutting ceremonies for actual farms. In 2017, with much fanfare, he opened a couple of model farm facilities, inviting local officials and even a famous actor for publicity. Attendees saw a handful of cows in clean stalls and assumed it represented a thriving, investor-funded agribusiness. It was nothing more than a Potemkin farm, a PR stunt with a few rented animals on display. Meanwhile, he franchised over 100 Çiftlik Bank-branded grocery stores across Turkey, selling cheese, honey, and meat with the company logo. This created the illusion that the virtual farm empire had real, tangible outputs. In truth, the stores were a cynical loop. Franchise owners paid hefty fees to join, and the farm products they sold weren't produced by any Çiftlik Bank farm at all. All the while, the money kept rolling in, and Aydin was skimming massive amounts off the top to fund his new lavish lifestyle. He may have called himself a humble farm banker, but his spending betrayed him. As tens of thousands of Turks were investing in virtual sheep and cows, Aydin was out buying luxury sports cars, including a bright red Ferrari that turned heads when he zoomed through the streets of Istanbul. He hosted fancy parties and surrounded himself with models, bodyguards, and an entourage fit for a movie star. On social media, he presented the image of a genius boy CEO who could do no wrong. To any doubters, he'd point to the happy early investors receiving payouts and the glossy videos of farmhouses and healthy cattle, insisting everything was above board. In reality, behind the scenes, there were no sustainable profits, just a growing pyramid of new deposits paying off the earlier ones. There were no real farms earning money for investors. The few farm locations were burning cash, not making it. The real product of Çiftlik Bank wasn't milk or eggs. It was pure hype and deceit running on hundreds of servers that kept track of everyone's virtual animals. By late 2017, Mehmet Aydin had built an empire of lies. Over 1.5 billion lira, around $130 to $250 million, had been collected into Çiftlik Bank's coffers by promises of unbelievable returns. The chubby kid in a hoodie from Bursa had transformed himself into one of Turkey's richest young entrepreneurs on paper. But to keep the con going, he needed to maintain the illusion and the constant influx of new money. A Ponzi scheme is like a beast that's always hungry. The moment people stop feeding it fresh cash, it collapses under its own weight. And soon Mehmet Aydin's house of cards would come crashing down, exposing the dark truth behind the cutesy farm game. No scam lasts forever. As 2018 dawned, cracks began to show in the Çiftlik Bank facade. Some players who tried to cash out their earnings started experiencing payout delays. The excuses from the company piled up: technical glitches, bank transfer errors, routine maintenance. But within whispers and online forums, a chilling realization spread among the more savvy users. This might be a Ponzi scheme about to implode. Turkey's regulators had already taken notice by the end of 2017. The promise of outrageous, steady profits from a video game had raised red flags. In January 2018, media reports openly questioned Çiftlik Bank's legitimacy. Headlines dubbed it Turkey's Farmville Ponzi, and authorities warned that the operation could be fraudulent. With pressure mounting from investigators, the flow of new money slowed, and the game's payout system began to falter. The fantasy was unraveling. Then came the final blow. In March 2018, the Çiftlik Bank house of cards collapsed virtually overnight. One day the app was working. The next, users logged in to find that withdrawals were completely frozen. Panic set in as people realized their money might be gone. And they were right. Mehmet Aydın had vanished, emptying out the company's accounts in the process. He didn't even bother to warn his own employees. He simply took the money and ran. Reports soon emerged that Aydın had fled Turkey, possibly routing through the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus and then on to South America. He left behind a half-finished empire, empty farm buildings, shuttered offices, and a whole lot of angry investors. In less than 2 years of operation, Çiftlik Bank had pulled in an estimated 1.1 billion Turkish lira from its users, about 130 to 140 million US dollars in total. Of that, roughly $80 million, 322 million Turkish lira, was directly siphoned by Aydın into his own pockets. Now that fortune accompanied him on his escape. He allegedly converted huge sums into Bitcoin and cash, stuffing his loot into suitcases. In a heartbeat, the beloved farm game went dark, and its creator became Turkey's most wanted con man. The fallout back home was dramatic and chaotic. Shock gave way to fury as hundreds of thousands realized they'd been duped. Victims gathered in front of Çiftlik Bank's offices and promotional farm sites, only to find them locked up and deserted. In some towns, enraged investors stormed the company's facilities, looking for something to grab as compensation. They attempted to seize whatever tangible assets they could find, a few goats and cows wandering the premises, because those animals were the only real thing left to represent their money. It was a surreal scene. Ordinary people dragging cows out of a farm in protest, yelling that these were their cows since they had paid for them in the game. Others burned Çiftlik Bank logos in effigy. The sense of betrayal was deep and personal. Entire life savings had evaporated into the ether of a fake farm. Law enforcement and government officials scrambled to contain the damage. An Interpol red notice was issued for Mehmet Aydın's arrest, placing him among the most wanted international fugitives. Turkey's financial crimes unit detained dozens of people associated with the scheme, including Aydın's own brother and his wife, trying to unravel how such a massive fraud had operated in plain sight. As investigations unfolded, it became clear that Çiftlik Bank was the biggest digital fraud Turkey had ever seen. In total, over 132,000 people had been defrauded directly, and many more were indirectly affected. The company had promised to pay out 2.9 billion lira in earnings eventually, but only about 688 million was ever paid. The rest had simply disappeared into the Ponzi black hole. Newspapers dubbed it the Farm Bank heist, and TV channels ran non-stop coverage of devastated investors. For a country that had already seen its share of get-rich-quick schemes, this one was unparalleled in scope and absurdity. 500,000 Turks had played a game, and it ended with $130 million up in smoke. Meanwhile, Mehmet Aydın was nowhere to be found. Tips and sightings poured in. One week he was allegedly seen driving his red Ferrari along the coast in Uruguay. Another report placed him in Dubai, or in some luxury villa in Brazil. He became a phantom, always one step ahead. In an audio recording sent from hiding, Aydın insisted he would pay everyone back and claimed he was a victim of circumstances. Few believed his hollow promises anymore. As months turned into years, the manhunt continued, and Aydın's legend only grew. Parents warned their children about the Tosunkuk boogeyman who could steal your money with a smartphone app. And the victims, many of whom had lost everything, waited desperately for justice. One of those victims was a 25-year-old man named Recep Atash, who had borrowed a large bank loan to invest in Çiftlik Bank. After the crash, facing unbearable debt and shame, he tragically took his own life at a shooting range. His story was a sobering reminder that this was not a game at all. It was real people's lives. The collapse of Çiftlik Bank left a trail of broken families, bankruptcies, and even suicides. The farm that wasn't real had wreaked very real destruction. For over 3 years, Mehmet Aydın was a ghost. with millions. While victims begged for justice, he lived like a king, somewhere warm, somewhere untouchable. Then suddenly, he gave up. In 2021, Aydin walked into the Turkish consulate in Brazil and surrendered. No chase, no sting, just the quiet end of a global manhunt. Maybe he ran out of money. Maybe he just knew the walls were closing in. Days later, the farm CEO was flown home in handcuffs. In court, he played the victim, claimed he never meant harm, promised he could pay everyone back if they just unfreeze his accounts. The judges didn't blink. In 2025, Aydin was sentenced to 45,000 years. His brother too. But the fortune? Gone. When they caught him, he had $13 in his wallet. A Ferrari and a yacht were seized. But that was pocket change. Tens of thousands lost everything. Justice came, but closure didn't. So how did he do it? Çiftlik Bank was fraud disguised as fun. Aydin turned greed into a game. Raise animals, grow fake profits, invite your friends. It felt harmless, addictive, rewarding, until it wasn't. The scam revealed something terrifying. In today's world, even a cartoon can clean out your life savings. So ask yourself, would you still click play? Most scams target the greedy. This one, it fooled the hopeful. If this story blew your mind, imagine what else is out there. Tap that like button, share this madness with someone who trusts too easily, and subscribe.